Hey everyone, John Henry here from Slingshot Futures Trading Group. Today we're going to be taking a look at our weekly futures, stock, and forex outlook for the week of 8/9. We've got a pretty slow week that we've kind of gone through, and now we're coming into this week with a little bit more to actually kind of, well, fingers crossed, keep going. Starting off on the futures market, we have the S&P. Now, the S&P has been grinding higher, and one of the big things that really stands out here for the S&P is that they overshot the highs of the channel, but when it came down to finding support, usually when you have a channel formation, they blow off the highs, and you expect them to blow through the lows. Kind of an equalization of the move, where they have that move up, and then it usually breaks down about that same distance. In this case, though, they actually held the low of the channel, and when it came back, it held it again, and that's showing an incredible amount of strength, a lot of bullishness that's allowing the buyers to try to keep this market moving higher. And along with that, we see trap after trap after trap, sellers getting trapped all over the place. These sellers down here have had several times and several opportunities to get out of break even or slight profit. But down here, they were stuck pretty badly, and they were stuck really badly. When sellers came back down again for another attempt, they got trapped. Another trap over here. They couldn't even trigger in the bears here. That was another trap. That was another trap. All of this wicking on the bottom should kind of tell you what's going on. Every time the sellers try to get something, they just get slapped in the face. So looking at this continuation move to the upside and kind of zooming into what's going on, we still have a wide open gap. That weekend gap has not been filled yet. It's still open and hasn't come down. We've kind of created a small little barrier, if you will. It's kind of like a little force field down there. It seems like the market's having a really hard time getting through. But now that we've created a fairly obvious level of support and the market's still pushing higher off the lows of the channel, the anticipation with that kind of strength is to get back to the top of the channel. We've got a little bit of a ways to go for that, but as long as the sellers stay stuck in here and they continue getting trapped over and over and over again, and we just keep seeing these bull days after, and one after another with huge rejections on the lows, chances are the sellers are still in the juicer and we're still looking for a continuation up. If the market does want to pull back, it obviously created a nice level of support down here. There's a lot of different levels, kind of like a rising three-press bottom. But if the market does want to flash back, I mean, it would be nice to see it dip back towards those 3300s, 3290s. You've got that previous swing high. You've got the kill zone lined up along with everything else. It's just kind of in the middle of the channel, but we're cycling off the bottom. The upside objective is still there. Everything looks like it's pretty good to go. It's just a matter of seeing how far this wants to continue up. Looking from a measured move perspective, we've got the first drive up. The second drive up didn't quite make it, so they might be looking to finalize that on the third drive, which means that we have an upside objective of 3,400 on the S&P, which is also, if we zoom really far out, back up to all-time highs. So the S&P is looking pretty strong right now, and that might end up widening out the channel a little bit and giving us something like this. But for now, this is about all we have to work with, looking for continuation up. Over on the NASDAQ, we have a really good continuation here as well, but slightly different context. Obviously, the NASDAQ's been at all-time highs for a while. Before the dip lower, that was the all-time highs. The market quickly slammed above that, and it's been going higher ever since. We have yet to really have a healthy pullback for that breakout pullback back to 10,000, which will likely still happen at some point. Just don't know when. But if we're looking at the near term, same context that we just saw with the S&P, sellers are getting trapped over and over and over again. Trap sellers. Couldn't even trigger. Trap sellers. Trap sellers. Trap sellers. You get the idea. They did get a little bit of something here, but as soon as it came time to try it again, they got smacked in the face. So we have a good, really, really good continuation up. Now, there isn't any overshooting or anything like that on this channel. This is just a very structurally sound channel. It fits really well. The market's not going above it, not going below it. And looking from a kind of objective-based standpoint, we cycled off the top to the bottom, went all the way up to the top, bottom, all the way to the top, bottom. We're probably going to keep grinding our way up to the objectives into the 11,500s or more. Right now on the snapback, in terms of seeing if they want to pull back a little bit, every time we've seen the sellers try to push into a high, it fails, and usually that following dip ends up being a nice little pullback before another rally higher. So I am watching for buyer support coming in just underneath 11,000 to see if they want to ping it off the lows of the channel. We have seen that as a repetitious pattern very frequently frequently before the market finally makes its way up to the top. It bounces off the low of that channel multiple times, and we're seeing kind of the same thing, right? We come down here after we finally get the objective, we bounce off it again, then we get to the highs, then we kind of skip off the top and come down to the lows, and skip off the lows. Haven't made it to the top yet, so we're probably going to skip off the lows again. So I'm looking for initially around 10,960, 961 or so to see if we can get a nice little dip back. But if the sellers really start cracking through this 873 with some conviction, then we're probably going to see a move down towards those 580s. NASDAQ's got a pretty open door here if they if we really want to start moving. And then over on the Dow has a very nice wedge. Now, I mean, the Dow is way far away from the all-time highs. All the other markets have gone up to the all-time highs or are really close. But the Dow is just hanging out. Now, the Dow does have some issues. Obviously, Boeing makes up a big part of the Dow, and a lot of companies that are really kind of taking the brunt of all of this COVID stuff kind of make up the Dow, unfortunately, for that market. But it is kind of, making its way back up there. And now we have a fresh little wedge that we broke out of. And this one's a little bit more interesting because not only is it the wedge breakout, but if we look at the overall context here, they tried doing the same thing before, where the market went up and kind of had this nice little rally higher and then consolidated lower high, broke out, and then went flying up. We have a big rally up, we consolidate lower, we have a wedge breakout. You could draw it this way too. Either way, we're breaking out of it and we're looking for a breakout pullback. That breakout pullback zone right now is back just underneath 27,000, more in like the 26,900s, but looking for a little more continuation to see if they can bounce back up. And eventually, maybe the Dow can match up with the others to those all-time highs. Upside objectives, aside from that, going to be at 27,489, that previous major swing. And then we do have an open gap space at around 28,500 up to 28,700. So that distance inside there from way back in February might cause a little bit of an area of interest. We got to get there first, though. All right, and then moving over to the stock side of things, first up, ADBE, that's Adobe, Alpha, Delta, Bravo, Echo. Very interesting formation going on here. Obviously, the tech sector, well, you could say they're doing pretty well during all of this, like we just saw in the NASDAQ there. And Adobe is in a very similar situation to what we see on the NASDAQ, with this nice continuation trend to the upside, breakout, looking for a small pullback back to support. Adobe has a nice little wedge formation that they broke out of, and now we're dipping back into support. This is the last time that we saw buyers coming in at this 450 area, 440, well, realistically more like 448, 449 in that zone. And looking for upside objectives for the market to rally back up above 460s towards around 464 first, 473.5 next, and then final objectives all the way back up to 488. Well, I say all the way back up, all the way up to 488. Adobe hasn't been there before. So that's kind of what we're looking at on Adobe, is just kind of a breakout continuation play along with the NASDAQ, and then looking for more upside momentum. Next one is on O, symbol O. We've got a nice wedge breakout here as well. Now, this is one of those situations where we've got a little bit of back and forth, a huge slide off to the downside where they fell from, 85 all the way sub 40 before bouncing back up. And after that low's been put in, it's been nothing but higher low, and anytime they have challenged in one of those little tiny inside swing lows, it's been nothing more than a trap. So looking at this overall structure, well, we broke out above the highs, we're cracking above this previous zone of resistance, and the market looked like it was going to lose it. It fell back in, tried breaking out, failed again, but when we rotated into another higher low, broke out again, now I'm very interested in looking for a continuation leg back up, showing that we have potential further higher on O. So looking for a pullback at around 61.50 to see if we can grab some upside objectives back towards 62.72, 63.49, and then up towards 64.64. We'll see if they can give us the pullback in the first place. And then the last one on the stock list, SMCI, that's Sandy Mike Charlie India. Nice, beautiful continuation higher, but with a little bit of overextension. We see a big pop, and then it grinds its way, big pop, and then grinds its way. And then we have this big pop, and it looked like it was going to try to grind its way down, but same thing that we were talking about on the other thing with O, we had that higher low failure and rotation back up. Breakout pullback, looking for a continuation back up to highs, potentially even all-time highs. So the zone initially at around 29.47, looking for upside objectives 30.79 up 31.57 and then 32.89. But realistically, if this does want to go further, there are some further upside objectives from previous back up towards those 34.50s, and then potentially even further up towards 38. So there are some longer term objectives on this SMCI that are also setting up along with the nearer term. And then finally over on Forex, first up is the Euro USD. The big thing that we were talking about before was the market coming back to kind of fill in this area, this big gap that they left behind. And well, not much of a surprise there with two very strong measured legs up and two impulse measured legs up. We're running into a bit of resistance up here. Doesn't mean that buyers are done by any means. More so what it likely means is that buyers are taking a break. We've achieved a very large objective that they probably weren't sure was actually going to make it up there. That was a big rally up, and it happened relatively quickly, given that we're looking at a daily chart. So seeing this pull back, a lot of buyers are not going to be wanting to buy way up here in the 1.85s, 1.8s. They're going to want a deeper pullback, especially if they miss this rally higher. So I don't think buyers are going to be interested until at least 1.165, maybe a little bit lower. And honestly, if it really wants to pull back, you might not find interest until back down in the 143, 144 areas where it starts retesting some of that previous structure. Either way, it is anticipated that buyers are going to be taking profit, seeing a little bit more continuation down. So I'm not looking to do anything until we get down towards at least 165. And then from there, we might be able to find a bouncing point back up towards that 88 area, 188. And then we've got above the twos, so 1.202 and then 1.222. So we'll see. Euro's got some potential here, but more likely we're going to see some pullback first. Over on the dollar yen last week, we were talking about potentially trapped sellers break-even zone. They missed it. And one of the big things that happens when you miss a break-even zone like that, sellers aren't going to want to hang out for a very long time. I mean, put yourself in the shoes of a seller who's been stuck short since March 11th, rallies all the way back up to almost all-time highs, or, well, not all-time highs, but big highs, and then starts rolling all the way back down, and it finally gets to a point where it's within striking distance of your break-even, it nicks it, and then runs right back up again. You're probably not going to be hanging out very long. And a lot of those buyers are going to be coming in, or sellers turning into buyers above that big bull bar, and the rest of them are just hoping, please come back. But the problem is, if we look at what they're doing here, we have support coming in off of the lows, huge bull bar. So a lot of sellers are also stuck from down here. And in terms of a healthy market context to the downside, we need to see sellers holding below the kill zone here, and they're closing above it multiple times. Now they're doing it again. Whereas if we look at the other side, the bull kill zone is holding really, really well. So there are a lot of problems for the sell side here. It looks a lot more likely that buyers are going to try to get a continuation rally back to the upside and maybe challenge some of this previous structure up in the 106.50s. Makes a lot more sense to see them want to push up into that area again as a challenge rather than seeing them go further down. Probability would dictate that moving up makes a little bit more sense. And then we've got the dollar CAD. Last week, again, we were talking about this big gap space. They did fill that in, and they created a major low, which was trapped underneath. So now that they've trapped underneath it, that is a twin reversal. They close outside of the major level, and then they close right back in. Now, in this, normally a twin reversal is a set of two candles. In this case, it closed down one, paused, and then closed up. But a lot of times when that happens, sellers are going to be looking for that breakout pullback momentum to the downside, and they're stuck on the wrong end now. So knowing that they're stuck on the wrong side, seeing the market dip back into an inside retest, right? They break out, they pull back, and they come back and hold an inside retest. That's where buyers are going to be looking to try to come in, because that's also where the break-even point for a lot of the sellers who got stuck short at the lows, that's where they're able to get out of break-even again too. So seeing a dip back makes a lot of sense, but more so for buyers. The context, I know, looks still very, very bearish, and it's early to the game for buyers, so probability is still not very good. Makes more sense to be looking for sell-side movement, but sell-side movement doesn't really start kicking in until we start getting back up into the 350s. So for right now, if you're trying to find a low, buy low, sell high kind of mentality, this was a nice failure off the bottom. A little bit of a dip back to those 331s, 332s could be a nice opportunity to see the market rally back up towards those bigger objectives that we're looking for. All right, so that's going to do it for the weekly outlook. Hopefully you find it useful and interesting, and maybe a couple markets that you've already been looking at. Maybe it lines up with your analysis. Maybe it goes against your analysis. It'd be kind of interesting to see what you guys are looking at as well. Drop those down in the comments. Hopefully you had a great week of trading. Hopefully you're able to rest up over this weekend and start off tomorrow or later today if you're a Sunday night trader. But either way, I hope you had a great one. And for you members, we'll see you probably tonight in the chat room. Otherwise, tomorrow morning in the live trade room. For the rest of you, though, we'll see you in the next video. Thanks.